France is a country that has more than its fair share of UFO encounters on record, including several waves. However, an encounter that took place in Saint-Jean-du-Gard in the early 1970s, perhaps little known even in UFO circles, is perhaps one of the most intriguing. Not only is it a probable sighting of a suspected extraterrestrial vehicle, but it featured a strange, albeit brief interaction between the possible occupant of that craft. In addition, there are other disturbing and thought-provoking encounters that took place in France in the 1970s, some of which are almost certainly alien abduction encounters. And while we don't have time to examine each and every one of these incidents, we will certainly look at some of the most interesting. The Saint-Jean-du-Gard encounter became public thanks to the research of Jean-Paul Guggen, who discovered a tape recorded by one of the witness's students when the witness told him about what they had seen, and on which the following encounter is based. According to the recording, in the early morning of August 9, 1972, at around 2:30 a.m., in Saint-Jean-du-Gard, a married couple, both teachers, were camping when their trip took a dramatic and remarkable turn. The main witness had ventured out of the tent because she had heard some kind of commotion, probably related to a festival being held nearby, she thought, and wanted to investigate. As he scanned the surroundings, he noticed a white ball of light about the size of a car. But the more she looked at it, the more perplexed she became, especially because of the intense glow it gave off. When she located the area where the light was a parking lot reserved for those camping in the area, she also thought she was seeing a strange glow in an otherwise normal road vehicle. As she watched the spectacle, she heard strange footsteps coming from behind her. From the sound and rhythm, she noticed that they sounded like a small child. Instinctively, she turned to where the footsteps were coming from. As she did so, she realized that a black figure had turned toward her. As it was dark, she could not make out many details, apart from an ovoid head and two large eyes. She also noticed that its legs were covered by the long grass. A sudden morbid fear came over her, a feeling that, she recalled, was not natural. She explained that this fear seemed to have been projected onto her by that strange figure, as if in an attempt to neutralize her. And what was even stranger, it seemed that, whatever it was, it exerted an extraordinary power over everything around it, adding that nature seemed dead or frozen around it. At that point, she turned around and headed back toward the tent to join her husband, Michel. Perhaps oddly enough, she went straight to sleep, merely contemplating the strange nature of the events she had witnessed. Upon awakening the next morning, the witness immediately connected the glowing car with the strange figure she had seen outside the tent. Although both she and Michel agreed that they should not speak publicly about it, they wanted to find out if any other campers or residents of nearby villages had witnessed the strange occurrences. For the most part, no one had seen anything strange, and many insisted to them that all they had seen were probably reflections from a bright motorcycle headlight. However, one of the residents of the village claimed that she had seen, or rather heard, something strange the night before at about the same time the witness saw the strange glowing object. This woman claimed that she had heard something walking across her terrace. What is most interesting is that the woman's property was no more than 100 feet from the witness's store. Unfortunately, the woman did not look outside to investigate who the strange prowler might be. In fact, she claimed that she simply went back to sleep. Assuming she heard something outside, and it wasn't the remnants of a dream, there is almost certainly a connection to the witness's strange experience. From there, the case may have gone cold. However, Guggen managed to track down the two witnesses. And, 2 years after the event, they spoke again about the events of that night. Guggen again asked the woman to recall the strange night. She recalled that when she first felt movement behind her, she thought it might have been her husband coming out of the tent to join her. She stated that although she could not see the details of the strange figure, she was immediately certain that there was life in it. Furthermore, she was unsure if the figure had turned toward her by chance or if it was actually looking at her, explaining that there was just a head turned toward me. Perhaps most intriguing was how she described the change in the atmosphere, as if something had happened, adding that it seemed that nature had stopped living. In all, he did not return to the tent for more than 15 seconds after seeing the figure. Michel's memories of that night are equally gripping. He recalls that he was awake in the tent when his wife suddenly came in giving a huge jump. As she did so, he exclaimed that he had just seen something terrible and frightening. He would recall that he immediately realized that his wife must have seen something out of the ordinary. When asked why he hadn't gone out to investigate what might be outside, he recalled that he simply hadn't had the courage to do so, especially because of how deformed by fear his wife's face was. Instead, they both decided it was best to stay exactly where they were. The witness recalled that they were especially concerned that any sudden movement they might make out of fear might be interpreted as a threat by that dark humanoid figure. They then recounted that they ventured to the place where she had seen the strange figure the night before, as well as the place where she witnessed the glowing ball of light. At the place where the figure was, they could see a piece of grass that had clearly been crushed. However, there was no indication that anything strange had happened in the parking lot. Guggen then asked the woman if she would see the strange figure again and if she would try to interact with it more than she had, to which she replied that she certainly would, adding that she believed she would not experience the same sense of fear, especially if this speculative encounter were to take place in daylight. The sighting, however, remains a complete mystery. Nevertheless, it is only one of many that occurred in France in the late 1960s and early 1970s. 5 years earlier, according to Jacques Vallée's research files, at around 11 p.m. on January 6, 1967, in Aveyron, a local resident claimed to have seen 6 luminous spheres streaking across the night sky. Even more surprising, a luminous beam emerged from the underside of one of the aerial vehicles and extended towards the ground. When the witness looked up at this column of light, he could see a humanoid figure standing inside. Strangely, the witness received a telepathic message from this being, informing him that he would write a book sometime in the future. Just 5 nights later, in the same region, on January 11th, a local farmer witnessed a strange shell-shaped object rise into the air from one of his fields. He then saw a strange ball of light about 150 meters in front of him. He jumped into his car and set out to chase the light. However, before he could reach it, the car's engine and headlights suddenly shut off. A moment later, he saw a saucer-shaped object coming out of the sky and stopping several feet above the ground, approximately 60 feet away. As the witness focused on this strange object, he noticed that there were 2 domed sections on top of the object, in each of which was a humanoid figure, both dressed in green one-piece jumpsuits. Suddenly, he was overcome by a strange wave of heat and felt momentarily paralyzed. The object emitted a hissing sound and rose into the air, coming to a stop about 150 feet up. It remained there for a few moments before descending back down to where it had been previously. This time, it began to glow bright yellow. An instant later, it shot up into the night sky and disappeared. An instant later, the car's headlights and engine came back on. The witness recalls that he had great difficulty sleeping for several days after the incident. On February 5, 1967, shortly before 10 p.m., in Sauvigny-les-Bois-Lyon, 49-year-old Louis Monin was standing outside his house when he saw a bright yellow object descending toward a cemetery a short distance away. He immediately called his teenage granddaughter, Marie, to also see the strange object. As the strange aerial vehicle approached, they could see that it was cigar-shaped and was changing color to a reddish-orange glow. It finally landed about 100 feet from their property. They estimated that it was approximately 60 feet long and about 20 feet tall. They watched as flames suddenly appeared at each end and headed toward the ground. At the same time, they heard a crackling sound, as if the vegetation below was burning. As they noticed it, a strange humanoid figure about 3 or 4 feet tall appeared next to the object. At that point, the couple rushed inside to look for other family members. However, when they returned, the humanoid and the object had disappeared. When they looked up into the sky, they could see what they assumed to be the object, which now appeared as a red in the night sky. France, like other countries around the world, has had a reasonably persistent UFO presence in its skies since the beginning of the modern UFO era, with many other potential encounters going back hundreds of years in history. What makes France a UFO hotspot of sorts is open to debate. However, the type of sightings we have examined here continue to occur today, with regular reports of anomalous aerial objects well into the 21st century. Is this due to a particular interest in this location on the part of these alleged alien entities? Or could these sightings suggest some sort of military operation that, for unknown reasons, is concentrated in this part of the world? The fact is that these encounters remain unexplained even today, half a century after they occurred. It remains to be seen whether more information will turn up on any of the incidents we have examined here. However, continued study of them not only keeps such encounters in the public consciousness, but allows us to detect possible connections and sightings that have not yet been reported, and thus ultimately offer the possibility of shedding an ever brighter light into the dark corners of the UFO and extraterrestrial question.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe to support this kind of content. See you on the next travel.